And welcome to New York. It's Kevin McCullough. Glad to be with you from the normal studios of AFA today. A quick shot outside our windows, and you see traffic in Times Square. It's maintaining. It's not really overly heavy today, but a lot of activity just per normal in the world's busiest city. Kevin McCullough welcoming you to the newest edition, though I do so with a heavy heart. I have found a long time ago when I began my work in broadcasting that there's a couple of different ways you can handle days that are not so good, and you can try to put on a fake smile and go about your life and pretend everything's normal, or you can just be real and ask people to pray for you. I am not walking through the routine of my day-to-day with any real joy or pep to my step, because my oldest son, who has significant and ongoing special needs, he's been adopted from Haiti. He is nearly 30 years old, one of the sweetest people you will ever meet, and one of those people that when he is walking with God and hearing God's voice speak to him, responds with some of the most generous and profoundly kind-hearted things that you've ever seen. And last night at his group home, we had an incident in which the staff weren't able to really contain it. They normally call me. I go over. I talk him down from the ledge a little bit. When whatever the switch is that does get flipped is flipped. There's some hurt. There's some anger. It comes from a long line of disappointments in his life, starting with the very youngest age of when he was severely malnourished and witnessed a very tragic death of his mother and some other things. And so as my adopted son for all these years, we've had this kind of incredible two-sided experience where one of the people that have taught me more about giving and being selfless than anybody I can imagine on one side of the coin, and then having these really dark places. And last night, the dark place got darker. We ended up spending the majority of the evening at the hospital. He's fine. He's been released under his own power. But today my heart is heavy. I'm a dad. I'm a father. Before I am a talk show host, before I am a broadcaster, before I am anything else other than a follower of Christ, the priorities with which I give my entire life's work, the blood, sweat, and tears of my labor every single day. It's not for anything other than the welfare of the McCullough family and my legacy that I'm desiring, hoping, and prayerfully building into the life of my three sons. So it's just that kind of day. We do have things to talk about today, and I am watching them for you. And then we've got a special guest in the next segment. Bert Harper's going to be here. We're going to talk about something that's coming up that is unique for pastors and of strong encouragement for pastors. So I hope that you will be with us for that, coming up just 20 minutes past the hour. But one of the things I wanted to get to, and I think it's important to, is a piece of breaking news that we just posted on the website not long ago, and it's on afatoday.com if you want to go see the actual story. But the Washington Post, I believe, is the place where this story is emanating from. The most recent issue in relationship to the Fort Hood shooting has occurred. Actually, it was Ed Morrissey at Hot Air that tipped me to this, not the Washington Post. But it's been determined that prosecutors in the trial of Fort Hood shooter Nidal Hasan have been restricted by the judge in that trial, and this is fairly significant. They have been disallowed from entering evidence into the record that he committed any form of jihad. This direction comes from the judge in the case. Ed writes, prosecutors will not be allowed to enter evidence that Nidal Hasan intended to commit jihad in his mass murder spree at Fort Hood. The judge in the court-martial ruled yesterday. Colonel Tara Osborne also struck from evidence the correspondence between Hasan and al-Qaeda leader Anwar al-Awlaki, though she did allow prosecutors to use some of his internet usage records and search histories. Long story short, what this means is that they're not gonna have any problem getting him convicted of murder. He admitted to that in his opening statements. That's already a foregone conclusion. What this does mean, and what this is shameful, is that it is a damaging ruling to the survivors, the families, relatives, the victims' relatives of the shooting itself. Because if this was a form of terrorism, if this was an act of terrorism, he would be they would be entitled to receive additional benefits from the United States military, from the United States government, from the U.S. taxpayers. And I, as one taxpayer, would be more than happy for them to receive those benefits, because I do think that when you lose a loved one in one of the greatest causes that you can, which is the service of our country, I believe that whatever the rules have been set up to say you're worthy of getting, that's what we should be doing. The fact that from the beginning the administration has ruled this as workplace violence, the fact that from the beginning they have said, that this is just common crime and not any form of terrorism. Friends, let me remind you, he was yelling Allahu Akbar at the top of his lungs while pulling those triggers repeatedly. Let me remind you that the evidence that she is disallowing, the direct correspondence between he and al-Awlaki, demonstrates a connection and a purpose and an intention to carry out an attack under the guise of al-Qaeda activism. This was a direct attack on Americans, and it was terror, and it was focused on our fighting forces. To me, in every way possible, this judge is doing something that is the gravest disservice to the legal system, to justice, to the families, and to the real truth of history. And I don't know why in this particular court-martial, Colonel Tara Osborne's being allowed to get away with this. Maybe if we have someone listening who is expert in military law, you can explain it to me. Maybe if there's someone who understands the process better than I'm more than willing. I'm all ears. But this doesn't make sense to me. And it especially doesn't make sense to the dozens of victims, families, that are owed something from this government, from this administration, from this military oversight. They are owed something for the loss of their loved one, as every person that has been killed in the retaliation and the war on terror that we have been carrying out since 9/11, every one of them on a foreign battlefield have received the same benefits that I feel like these families are entitled to. But I want to know what you think. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. The truth is that if we look at these victims' family members and we say you are in some way undeserving, while people who lost loved ones in field of forward actions get the same benefits, what are we saying? What are we saying to families that may have service members in them and serving stateside? Your life isn't as valuable. We don't need you as much. What is the real message that the government sends when they say, under these circumstances, you're just not as important? 888-589-8840, interested in your thoughts on that. Ed Morrissey continues in his analysis at hotair.com. He said the real damage in this ruling is to the survivors and the families of the deceased. They want to pursue civil litigation against Hassan and against the Obama administration's designation of the attack as workplace violence. Lawsuits will force the Department of Defense to answer for that decision, which keeps the dead and wounded from being recognized as victims of a terrorist attack. And an attorney representing the families expressed his outrage yesterday, saying that the evidence of Hassan's motives should have been allowed, as they would be in any other first-degree murder trial. This is a miscarriage of justice, not a miscarriage of finding a verdict. He's already confessed to the killing, but this is looking at it purposefully, ignorantly, purposefully ignoring other elements that were pertaining to the killing, the motivation of the killing, the rationale of the killing, and ultimately, I believe, the prediction that the killing was coming. Maybe the administration doesn't want to admit that this was an act of terror because they just didn't have any clue that Major Nidal Hassan was ready to do this. Maybe it's an admission that they're not ready to protect us as much as they say that they are. I'm not being dogmatic about any of that. I'm just saying it's a possibility. But friends, this news breaking this morning, the judge in the case of Nidal Hassan is disallowing any evidence that he committed jihad in the execution of that murder spree some 4 years ago now. And let me just add, it's been 4 years, and those 4 years have gone by with him receiving every single paycheck that he had before he was charged. Every single paycheck has come to him. We've paid him in excess of $300,000 over the 3 years that he's been in prison. How much have you made over that same period of time? How much have I made? That's a lot of money that has continued to be paid for him. Meanwhile, the victims, the survivors, have not received the benefits that they are due under the normal military code. It's discouraging. I think it's immoral. I think it's outrageous. What are your thoughts? 888-589-8840. So in review, it's a heavy day for me. We're gonna plow through this, but I'm not under any. I've just never been one of those guys that goes out and does the song and dance and acts like everything's normal. That's in the back of my mind constantly today. So pardon me if I forget something or if I seem to be a little off at some point. This is the story we're talking about, taking your calls. One phone line open, 888-589-8840. And coming up, why should your pastor attend the Fishbowl Retreat coming up? We've got a great opportunity to find out why. Bert Harper will be with us, who is head of the pastoral connections here at AFA, and looking forward to chatting with him. Let me take a call or two before we go to our first break, and starting with Teresa. Teresa, welcome. You're on AFA Today with Kevin McCullough. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure thing.
I guess I really want to get to the root of the issue and just want to know why there's even a trial. You know, I mean, didn't the man say he did this? He did this with no regret? You know, why is there even a trial? Let alone the judge acting like she's acting. And who's gotten to her? You know, who's working behind the scenes?
Well, I honestly can't for the life of me figure out what it is that is so offensive to understand or to know that he was, why that piece of evidence is being kept from the masses. It seems to me to be a very, silly attempt to even limit the discussion. But it's certainly one that I think in any other court of law would maintain relevance and absolutely be admitted.
But I mean, in other circumstances, as to a crime, would there actually still be a trial?
Well, we would always go through with the trial, of course. You have to be found guilty before we can punish you.
Even if you've confessed?
Even if you've confessed. They still have trials for murderers that confess.
Okay, well, I guess I misunderstood, because I just think it's an absolute waste of, once again, of our tax dollars, you know, to try someone who's confessed to a crime. I don't know. I mean, if you say you did it.
No, I can't argue with your logic, Teresa. But you understand that putting on the trial is one of the least expensive things related to this. Certainly, paying him his salary this whole time, almost $400,000 over the course of those 3 years, and not paying a penny of benefits to the victims' families seems incredibly imbalanced to me. The trial I can live with. If we're going to say, well, we want to make sure that we dotted every I and crossed every T, even if he confessed, I can live with that. I'll pay for that part of it. What I don't understand is why we've continued to pay him his earnings and gone from there to not paying a dime of benefits to the victims' families. It just doesn't make any sense. Kevin McCullough, it's a busy day, AFA Today. Stay with us here on AFR Talk.
I'm Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association. My dad, Don Wildman, a Methodist minister, started AFA way back in 1977.
Watching television one night during the Christmas holidays, there were not that many networks, only 3, and all 3 had objectionable material.
He left the pulpit and set sail for waters uncharted. He felt the call of God on his life to do something about the moral decline in America.
Within a week or so, I finally decided, well, this is what the Lord has prepared me to do, and this is what I should do. So basically, that's what we intend to go on doing.
We're glad to be here today ministering to people, standing for truth and righteousness and decency and morality, those things that made our country great in the first place.
The older I get, the more evident it is that God has been behind this ministry.
The American Family Association, fighting to restore the moral foundations of American culture and aiding the church in fulfilling the Great Commission. Visit afa.net.
The Point of View Commentary with Kirby Anderson.
You know, the president has been out speaking on the economy, and he's been encouraging businesses to start hiring more people and start paying workers higher wages. A recent survey indicates that will be happening. But Dr. Merrill Matthews of the Institute for Policy Innovation explains that these changes in the business mindset are not due to the president's speeches. They are due to his decision to postpone the business mandate. First, let's look at the survey of small businesses done 2 weeks ago. The pollsters discovered that 24% of small business owners surveyed plan to invest in equipment and facilities over the next year. They also found that 16% will hire new employees and 15% plan to increase wages or other benefits. If the survey stopped there, I think the president, economic advisors to the administration, and members of Congress might be convinced their economic policies are the major reason for this dramatic shift in attitudes among small business. But the survey found that it was the business mandate reprieve that was the reason. Businesses found that they would have additional money they would have had to spend and are willing to invest, hire, and increase wages. Dr. Matthews asks an obvious question. If this is what businesses are doing with a one-year reprieve from the Obamacare mandate, what might they be willing to do if the employer mandate were repealed? I think it's reasonable to assume that the U.S. economy would take off. The economy would grow, businesses would create more jobs, and wages would rise. Dr. Matthews reminds us that this president has imposed more taxes, mandates, and regulations on business than any other president in history, with the possible exception of FDR. We shouldn't be surprised the economy is sluggish. We also shouldn't be surprised what a little incentive, like postponing the business mandate, can have on creating jobs and increasing wages. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Following in the tradition begun by Dr. Don Wildman, this is the American Family Association's Noonday Get-Together, where we look at the world through a biblical worldview. AFA Today.
So glad you're with us, AFA Today.